Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the button, here we go. So it was supposed to say a small, okay? The emphasis is on small. I know we're going the other way and the other, you know what I mean. But and it's supposed to say in 40 minutes. Not a chance, but it's even smaller than that we're gonna make a change, okay? But I'm gonna keep trying. So actually we'll go first with the big things, the thank you. That's always important. And, you get humbled because in a sense, I'm not the expert. I might read about it and do it, but the experts are in the room, i.e. the patients that have it, the patients, even calling them patients, the people that have something. You're the experts, not a chance. I get it, you get it. So think of yourselves as experts. We're just hanging around trying to help. So that was kind of an emotional thing I thought I'd get off my chest. But we'll walk through this as quickly as possible. And these are the areas that we're gonna try to work through fairly quickly and effectively. But in the end, you gotta pick it, you gotta want it, and you gotta do it. That's, you don't need 50 years of experience to say that, but you do. It does come down to some very simplistic ideas. So the reason I say that is after I keep looking at it, and we all look at it, that's what I want to do today, is to say, okay, I'm going to give probably those 3 basic tips, but I'm going to take you through a little walk of how I got there, using the evidence, using kind of patients, and so on. So here we go. This is not therapy. This is tips based on what I read in terms of the evidence and where you might want to head. I'm not saying this is the only way, but everyone has their own journey. But this is a pseudo-academic / patient-oriented tip list. So number 1 tip, as everyone mentioned, you need to minimize the chances of dying, if that's a priority for you. And you need to minimize the chances of getting sick, which is another priority for everyone. Nothing special, and the way you do that is to go to this plethora of endocrinologists. I've never been surrounded by so many. And, but I'll tell you, and the genetic piece, oh my God, that took it to another level for me, back to horror stories in medical school. But you should have been teaching us. So the bottom line is get the help, optimize the help, and you're fortunate enough to have the help. And that's just purely medical. Now the psychological piece is another level. So here we go. I'm going to try to make a change if I can. Okay, so let's start. Apparently dung is very sacred in other countries. They use it for everything. But I didn't want to use the other word, but you're going to get thrown a lot of dung. Okay? And the idea is that some of that's going to stick. And that's all it is tips. Right? People are saying, try this, try this, try this. So today, I'm going to see if we can take all the stuff that's thrown at you, make sure that it doesn't hit the fan, if you know what I mean. That's kind of a cool picture. And we're going to take the mess. I just learned this. That's what poutine is defined as. It's called mess. And so we're going to take the mess, sort it. Okay, that's a minor thing. It's funny, it came out to 3 things, so that's probably all I'm going to do. So the dung is the psychological stuff you're going to be thrown at. Your mom has an opinion, your grandma has an opinion, your kids have an opinion, you know, and you're like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Let's see if we can try it. Okay. So quality of life, everyone was talking about, or it was mentioned. So quality of life is a massive measure. It's a massive measure because there are massive measurements. And so these two things that we'll just quickly look at them. But if you ever want any sources to look at, you know, you can just quickly look, nothing magical. The reference is a young one, and then there's a reference of an old one. The only reason I mention this is I can ask anybody, is your toe hurting? Are you sleeping okay? Are you know, getting along with people? They're all probably going to say yes. So if you look at the literature based on the quality of life of patients with acromegaly, everything's a yes answer. So it makes sense that, you know, it's mentioned a lot, like, you know, you need a proper quality of life, but it means like sleep, the way you view your illness, you know, the patterns it's everything. So let's just clump it together. Things aren't good for everyone in regards to quality of life. And I think that's a fair statement. It's not minimizing the illness, it's not minimizing, but if you look at the literature on how they get this information, it could apply to anything. And so this is, as you read the literature for acromegaly, I don't believe you should be bought into the idea that it's the illness. I'm not saying no to it, I'm just saying that's part of life, the way they measure things. And look it up yourself. And then we're going to see what I mean. I'll tell you, you'll get to see it. Okay, so we'll just talk about the terms. There's nothing major, but quality of life is how you experience something positively, negatively. Done. It's multidimensional, just means there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that they're measuring. From a psychiatric perspective, yes. Last year I mentioned when we talked about depression and anxiety always show up, okay, as one of the highest rates, and we chatted about how we might approach it. There's a whole bunch of elements to it, and as you can see, body image, illness perception, acceptance of the illness, stigma, it goes on and on. But they have to hone it down to like 22 questions or 13 questions so that they can do research. And then they can say that, okay, their quality of life's not great. And as mentioned, it doesn't come on its own. Comorbidities make psychological wellness not great, because the more food you have on your plate, the more stress you have, and the more psychological distress, guaranteed. Doesn't matter who it is. Okay, so this is what they tried. So they looked at all these quality of life measurements and so on and so on. And this was kind of cool because it was done internationally. So that my cultural question of what's it like around the world, it's the same, I guess. But what they found is that 8 weeks of mindfulness, go and do some mindfulness, okay? It helped a bit, nothing great. They said that 12 months of psychoanalysis, kind of cool, highly expensive, but psychologically, I have to agree that if I had my way, therapy, analysis makes total sense. It's an illness you've lived with for a large part of your life. It's an illness that's intruded in your life, but you've never kind of hashed it out psychologically with a trained therapist to understand it, to understand patterns. Remember last year we were talking about, you know, you could have this and this happen in your life and it goes, but life still goes on. There is always the advantage to looking at these individually, but that takes years. And that's why that number, that 12 months makes sense, but no one has access to analysis. But it's not the only thing you can do. And this was interesting. If you go to a physiotherapist, that effect is lost after a month. Psychologically, quality of life, this understanding, it's lost. A psychological focus group and cognitive behavioral therapy, those worked. But this is where Deanna deserves credit. Well, I'm certain there's other areas you can get credit for. But this whole concept of what we're doing today, group therapy, this is a modified version of group therapy. There's people in here, and that's why I started. You're the expert. That's who you go to. Shared experiences, shared knowledge, and you know it better. Universal themes, universal ideas are in this room. And that's patient-centered. It's totally patient-centered. But to do groups properly, you need a moderator, you have to go regularly. There's a whole bunch of areas in group therapy that are found to be effective, and that's why I like that result. Is everyone's kind of chasing individually, but this makes sense. Once a year, tough to put it together, but and the idea we were trying to run regular kind of monthly things or so on made sense. And like I said, there is evidence for group therapy. So I would keep using it. Despite, it's hard to do. It's not easy. And then the cognitive behavioral therapy, we talked about that last year. How you see something frames how you feel. If you reframe how you think about it, you're going to feel a bit better. Notice I said bit. It's not going to make you change into something totally different. But it's that comfort of sitting with something that we all have dysfunction about. Emotions, coping, getting through life. Sitting with it, okay, I'll deal with one thing at a time. I know that sounds simple, but it is partially that simple. Okay, there's another term you'll run into, that you guys might not have ran into it, is illness intrusiveness. So just another way, like quality of life looks at these massive measures. Illness intrusiveness says, how much does this interfere with my day? And, I got to take meds, I got to go to appointments, I got to do this. And that's just another term that you may run into. I think it's more practical. I think that's a more practical term to use. And I wish more people would actually do more research in that, but there's so many measures for quality of life, they'd rather stick to that one. So here's the test. And again, you can see my bias. I'm just trying to convince you that you can find anything wrong with quality of life. But Acromegaly, this was in 2002. If you ever become a research person, this is what you're going to have to go through. Okay? I hope you can read this. Okay, so this line here, this funky line, as you can see, never always. I'm going to just flash this up. I hope you can see this. It's a little small, but I want you to read it. I want you to pick one thing. That's the first test and assignment. I just want you to pick one thing off this list and rate it. Okay, we're not going to ask how people rated it, but it's a visual analog test, and you pick. This is leading towards my top 3 things I'm trying to teach you. So, that's my hidden agenda. Are we ready? Yeah. Boom. I don't know if you can read it. I know. Okay, so I got to just read it. Okay? Wait. Okay? Oh, sorry. I can't jump around. Okay, great. That's right. Okay,
so the first one.
You have to pick one.
My legs are weak.
Oh, pause so they can think. Okay, go ahead.
I feel ugly. I get depressed. I look awful in photographs. I avoid going out very much with friends because of my appearance. I try to avoid socializing. I look different in the mirror. I feel rejected by people because of my illness. I have problems carrying out my usual activities. People stare at me because of my appearance. Some part of my body, nose, feet, hands, are too big. I have problems doing things with my hands, for example, sewing and handling tools. The illness affects my performance at work or in my usual tasks. My joints ache. I'm usually tired. I snore at night. It is hard for me to articulate words due to the size of my tongue. I have problems with sexual relationships. I feel like a sick person. The physiological changes produced by my illness govern my life. I have little sexual appetite. I feel weak.
Thank you. You did that really well. So that's how things are measured. Like, it's kind of nasty. Like some of the questions, and they lack empathy. But this is the kind of stuff this is where they're collecting data from, is this. But 2025, that's where we're at. So please pick one. And I just want you to pick one of those as something you want to tackle in less than 40 minutes. Okay? So you got that. So the number one step in anything, you got to have an objective. I know that sounds simple, but that's evidence-based. But it has to be, you have to not only pick it, but you got to pick the daylights out of it. So if you pick something, you got to, the groundhog just going crazy to figure out what that means to you. You could say you feel ugly. That's a general term. But you got to get in there and start digging around. What does that mean? Is it my nose? Is it this? Is it that? Go on YouTube, go on anything to figure out, is that fair to me to use that term? Does it apply, right? So pick. You've got one thing, so pick one thing. And the rule of thumb is do one thing at a time, do it well. If you fail, too bad, but you learned a ton of stuff in failing. So psychologically, your brain gets prepared for the next hurdle, okay? Everybody got their one thing, that's it. I know I can't. If I knew how, I would know. No idea. The top one is, my legs are weak. Okay? Okay, pick one and let's see if, okay. Next. So, someone actually alluded to it. It's called the adult learning theory and so on. So, this is it. It doesn't matter what you do, you're either going to think about it, you're not going to think about it, you're going to think about it vaguely, you're going to think about it, you're going to prepare to do something about it, you're going to act on it, and you're just going to maintain it, right, till it becomes a habit. So now you have to tell your brain, or whomever you want, what stage are you in the thing you picked? Is anybody at the action stage? That'd be interesting. Is anybody at the action stage of what they picked? Like, I'm talking, I feel ugly. I couldn't give a flying whatever. I'm doing my thing. I'm going to keep moving through my life. Is anyone at that phase? Yes? Awesome. See how rare that is? But we all of us, oh God, and there's always that guy in the room saying, get off your backside and start doing something. But that's a bugger to do on your own. And that's why use your grandma, use your daughter, use your YouTube, use anything, because there's a ton of information out there to tell you, to help you to get motivated. Do I have the clue? Not a chance. Maybe provide a samosa? No. But you know what I mean? Just everything's getting thrown at you. You can throw stuff at you, but you can force yourself to learn about it. So you move through the second stage. You've picked something. You've motivated yourself to decide, I'm going to do it. Because the brain, it depends on who you read, about 6.5 to 8 months, it becomes a habit. But you got to go hard to do it. And the slower you do it, and again, don't be hard on it's funny, don't be hard on yourself. Have a sense of humor. Do anything that's self-soothing. Oh, God, I didn't do that again. I'm an idiot. No, you're not an idiot. You didn't make time for it. Don't be hard on yourself. We're all going through it. There's nothing magical about this. Use religion, use drugs. No. Just do something that's going to get you there. Apparently, you're allowed to use drugs now, so it doesn't matter. Again, you pick something, you have to be motivated to do it. And this is the neuroscience, right? The neuroscience is easy. I have a loop that says, get up in the morning, brush your teeth, and leave the room without waking up your wife. Right? So I got that loop. It just gets reinforced over and over again. If I get off that loop, there's problems. So the next thing you want to do, neuroscience, this is my view of, there's a bunch of ways to view the brain. We talked about last year. You got to create a new loop. That loop, because that other loop is not it's just rusty. Well, I mean, it just keeps going and going and going. If you don't create new loops, nothing's going to change. And so that's the third version. The third part of this is you got to do that. It's not got to, but it's certainly from a neuroscience / psychological / research perspective / real life perspective, it should work. But we don't do it. And again, it is that simple. But I'm couching it with, it's hard work. It's very hard work. But that's only one thing. But the other thing you create, we all know it, it's like sugar. It creates an addiction to positivity. It creates an addiction to success. It creates an addiction to make my brain feel better. Has a positive effect. And you talk about endocrine, yes, there's changes from like cortisol levels to, I don't know so much growth hormone, but certainly cortisol levels. And people use that as some markers for depression. It's not strong, but it's good there. And there you go. You'll have a new habit. So additional, and we mentioned that about the cognitive behavioral therapy. Nothing new there. And another quick way, I was just going to say, a quick way when you get a habit or something you want to change, it's old, find out when you think about it, what makes it worse, what makes it better, all of the factors. Again, going crazy on understanding it, and then you move towards change. 3 options. If you have stuff You can amplify the positive, amplify the negative, ignore it, or just sit with it. That's why analysis is kind of beneficial. This stuff is, you know, I just threw it in to make it thorough, is that part of that quality of life study data, you're talking about body scans, self-compassion, and so on, that anything that, as I've mentioned, soothing techniques. But this is the, again, comes back to this is the best part, again, to Deanna. This is what groups do. You know, even if you think about it, if as a group you each chose something, you came up, you're accountable to the group. So what did you do last week? Oh, I did nothing. Oh, way to go. You know, and then all of a sudden someone else in the group says, no, I did this. So it motivates internally. It's cohesive because everyone gets it. It's cathartic because you can go and vent to people that get it. If you vent to a family member that doesn't have it, they're just going, well, quit whining, Mom, or something, right? They don't get it. And it reduces isolation, which is great. It reduces stigma because you feel a lot more comfortable talking about it, and you don't need someone interpreting it or understanding it. Yeah, they just get it. And it promotes imitative behavior. That's why groups are great. And if you can add the 3 kind of little things that I added, I think it'll help. And these are all, there's a ton of ways that they measure quality of life in addition, like using these surveys, and but it's, again, it's for research purposes. So there we go. But I just wanted to tell you some poutine facts before I leave. So Montreal, it has nothing to do with it. It's all around Drummondville. And so I don't even know where Warwick is, but it's somewhere around there. And apparently, I learned this yesterday while I was eating it, you're supposed to have vegetarian gravy. You're not supposed to have meat. There should be no meat because apparently it ruins the flavor and it makes it salty. So that was a personal thing. And it was invented in the 1950s. I thought it was meant to just any day. You could just make it. And apparently New Brunswick has the best. So, but yeah, pardon? Yeah, I couldn't find the guy's name. It was just, they said the region.
I think it was Grandma in the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. But thank you again, and do what you can do with the information. Thanks.
Wait.
Thanks.
Is there anybody that has a question?
Perfect.
So I just want to back up what Dr. Bhalerao said about concentrating on one thing and doing step by step to concentrating on one thing, digging for the information to understand it, and then work with the information that you've read to make it better. I am just me. I'm a normal person. A couple years ago, I ran into a brick wall hard, and it was ugly, and I couldn't figure out why. What happened? Oh my God. And I thought it was an anxiety attack, and I got home and my doctor's like, yeah, no, mental breakdown. And I'm like, what caused it? And he said, you got no serotonin in your body. And I went, so it was a chemical that needed to be produced in my body by my stomach to keep me happy, to keep me going in life. And all of a sudden there was none in my body. So I had to relearn how to take care of myself again with another problem. And it was a hard tackle, but I had the options of just saying, I'm done, I'm walking away from it all and sit on the couch for the rest of my life, or not, and my desire for acromegaly was so much stronger to keep going that I pushed myself to get better. And it was a hard go. I think it was as hard as when they told me I had a tumor in my brain that day, but my desire to be able to still bring acromegaly to the forefront was just more stronger. And talking to my friends about it and having them support me. Like I could get on the phone at 2:00 in the morning and go, I'm not doing good. You got 10 minutes, right? And this is where you lean out to your I say members, sorry, but this is where you reach out to the members in the group, right? For support. But most definitely, if you're going through a hard time, I strongly advise doing therapy. If you can get a therapist. In Canada, it's a little hard, but if you have the opportunity to talk to a therapist, definitely do it. Okay, sorry. Dr. Isaac.
Thank you for the talk. I enjoyed the way that you did it. I have a question or comment. So you may or may not know, I've been looking after people with acromegaly for over 30 years. In 1992, I published a paper specifically contrary to the medical community. It was called Living with Acromegaly, where I sat down with about 50 consecutive patients with acromegaly, and I chronicled exactly what their journeys were like. And over the decades, I've come to learn that there really, while there's some common threads, everybody has a unique journey and there's a different set of problems. So my question to you is, recognizing that, what's your advice to the patient community and to the physicians on how to manage those sort of problems? Is it better to look at it from a very acromegaly-centric and that this is a very unique situation? Or is it one that is reflective of the slings and arrows that happen to any of us when we have a chronic, debilitating, cumulative set of medical problems over time? Or is it really a way to try and integrate both the unique, the specific, but also the general? And the reason why I ask that is because at the end of the day, when you say, why does it matter? Because one of the things that everybody's looking for now is patient-reported outcomes. So really what we're talking about is also a metric that we need to use from a medical standpoint to know how far off the mark we are.
Yeah, that's a great question, because both, but there's a concept of, they call it the life review. And so the life review is similar to, it's a kind of a developmental psychiatric history. So it's interesting, you got 50 different stories. What's kind of unique about life reviews, that the common thread that helps patients move forward. Oh, so at age 10, you bumped your knee. What did you do? Oh, I went and talked to my parents. And they took me to the doctor. Oh, that's great. At age 20, I heard that you had an illness, and oh, it happened to be acromegaly, or you were diagnosed with something. How did you cope with that? What we look for is patterns of coping. So all of us have hurdles. So she went and sought help for her parents and doctors when she bumped her knee. Oh, it's kind of interesting. You didn't do that when you were diagnosed with acromegaly. You stayed in your room, you were depressed, that's different. So then that's the first red flag that says, probably need psychiatric help for, moving forward, because this is different to a coping mechanism they had used before. So we have multiple events in our life that we cope with. Whenever patients, it doesn't matter what it is, whenever patients do something that's kind of out of the ordinary, that's when the red or pink flag goes up. So my comment would be reflect on patterns of coping. If there's a sudden kind of change to how you're coping, that's when the flag to get help would make sense. So that, and I know that sounds, because 50 stories have 50 different events, but I would be interested to know their coping style. And so coping style, if you look at the review, when we review coping styles, the biggest ones are safety. Were you safe at the time? Do you hurt yourself? Do you hurt other people? Do you use drugs? Do you use alcohol? Do you rant and rave? Do you do? So its coping styles would be very important in a life review, so that you, as physicians and whomever in the community, can say, hey, you got it. Look, you did this all the time before. You got this. This is a little different, but you got it. That's how I would use it in the clinic, especially if you have such great stories. And that's why it's important to remember those hurdles so you can reflect back to them, hey, you did this before. I think you can do it again. And the issue of, do you minimize, maximize, integrate the illness? That is dependent on the patient. That is dependent on culturally as well. You know, certain illnesses, you take mental illness in some Asian communities, it's just put in somewhere in a closet and no one touches it. In another culture, it's like, holy, Fred's got schizophrenia, let's get him to the ball game. You know, like they're just, it's, so the cultural piece and what they bring to the table that way kind of affects how they're going to go next. So the answer is reflect to them that they do have these strengths. We're going to use those strengths to move forward. If not, then that's when guys like us get involved, probably, to help out. And you talk about the serotonin piece, and there's a whole biopsychosocial piece, but that's how, I don't know if that answers the question, but I would do that review to use it to reflect back, because it empowers them. And we're not getting into a discussion about, is this more important than another illness? Is this, do you know what I mean? Like, we're going to all be dealt a card of some sort. It just, you want to empower them to move forward. And you can do that in your clinic. You don't have to be a shrink. The hard part is the time to listen to the history, the developmental history, because that gets ignored in most, clinics. No one's doing this.
So along those lines, I'm going to put out there what
Sure.
I have a hypothesis.
Sure.
and I'm interested, obviously, in hearing what other people have to say and your comment on that. I truly believe that acromegaly is a condition of maladaptation, that it is part of the stress response. And we know that the pituitary is part of the integrating system that recognizes and perceives stressors and produces a response. And the response is very calculated. It sometimes affects different parts. And as you mentioned, cortisol is one axis, and that's why you see sometimes Cushing's as a parallel. Sometimes, on the other hand, it selects the growth hormone axis. And that's where it starts. It allows you to be able to cope. But then it gets to a certain point where, probably due to a variety of additional genetic predispositions, it goes amok. In other words, the adaptive response overshoots and becomes and takes a life of its own. There's actually somebody who used to study here in Montreal, and if you look up his name was Hans Selye. And he believed, and he demonstrated in experimental systems, that you can reproduce pituitary tumors by subjecting animals to stress. So it's kind of ironic that we are back here in the same place where it all started. This is back in the 1950s. So my question is, can people actually go through in their own histories and identify a common thread where things perhaps were, if you will, gradually becoming more and more and more stressful until there was a break point where they can identify where perhaps it was no longer possible to continue to adapt and respond, and whether identifying that moment during their journey is of value, because is revisiting it going to alleviate the consequences? Because that I think is a very key point. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so if anybody rattled my head or rattled anyone's head with a change in serotonin, dopamine, all of that. So to use the term maladaptive from biologically, I might buy it. Is there's been a disruption in serotonin, there might be. But psychologically, pain is pain. Depression is depression in the sense. I don't think that's a result of the biological piece, but psychologically, I think there's more power with our histories and our backgrounds and so to overcome what is maladaptive, right? So I think the psychological piece is not maladaptive. I would say that the psychological piece is what's required. It's not maladaptive. Now, it could be maladaptive if you come to the plate with maladaptive skills, such as drinking, things that don't help you. So psychologically, I think you don't want it to become maladaptive, but I see it as adaptive. Socially, your family, your friends, and they will adapt to a change that's adaptive. I don't see that. So I'll go over even. So biologically, yes, it's a maladaptive change. Psychologically, I believe we all move towards an adaptive change as well as socially. That's how I see it. So I don't see the whole thing as maladaptive. So I think it's personal. I don't think it's fair for whoever made that comment. It kind of pathologizes the entire psychosocial / biological piece. I don't find that fair. I don't know if that's an argument, but that's how I see it. Like there's two branches of the three that are adapting to a biological change. And so it's not across the board maladaptive. That's how I see it to that question.
Does anybody in the audience here have any comments to make? I mean, does any of that ring any?
I was wondering about motivation. Wondering about motivation. So you're talking about adaptation to change, coping, and you've got a list of things that you're finding people might choose one and work on. Some of those will be very difficult to change, and others would be more adaptive to somebody who's very motivated for change. Social isolation, for example. You may find that, and I agree with various conditions, you will find that there are certain aspects of your life where you want to become more socially isolated. And that's something that you could work on quite easily if you have the motivation. How do you sustain that type of motivation when you're not necessarily seeing incremental improvements in the things that drive you to that isolation? And in today's society with social media, where our expectation for change is changing so that we're anticipating more rapid change, or we're expecting change to occur more rapidly. That's a disincentive for motivation. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how you maintain that motivation when you've got factors that are driving against it.
So, could you please let everybody know what you did as a career?
All right, so
I want you to understand who he really is, besides what you offer.
So my clinical background is in clinical neurophysiology, and I worked with patients for about 12 years at a large teaching hospital. And then I did an MBA and I became clinical director of mental health at the Ottawa Hospital.
it's the million-dollar question, because if we all go up and down, like in terms of motivation, a simple answer would be, well, however you got motivated before, keep doing it now. I don't know what that is. But you pick motivation as your topic. You go crazy on the internet, you go crazy whatever, to figure out motivational skills that keep driving you forward, or maintain motivation. But you only pick that. I agree, social media, you know, but look at a more well-informed brain about these issues may allow you in a mature sense to, it's just social media. How is that going to affect my I'm simplifying. But you go crazy just on that, because it's the thing it's the hurdle, right? It's the hurdle that you come, again, this is just a golf analogy. If you're slicing the ball, figure it out, and then change your swing.
If only it was that simple.
I know, exactly. And it isn't. And that's why it's a million-dollar question, is how do you maintain, a good round of golf, but how do you do that? And that's why it's so individualized, because we bring so many different things to the table that make it a hurdle. And that's why I tried to say, this is just a very small dab of trying to help give you a template, a three-arm template. Find out what it is, motivate yourself as best as you can, and just make it a habit of some sort. And again, that doesn't sound like science, but it is.
And set your expectations within reason, so that when you're looking for incremental change, you actually can achieve something. So my slice was terrible. I've now had 3 rounds where it's improved. It's not great, but it's improved. I'm now motivated to go out again.
And I'm laughing, but you also need a family member, and I'm just being blunt, don't be an idiot. It's a soft fade. It's not you know what I mean? Someone has to shake your cage to say your view of it and your goals are unrealistic. And you have to align with someone, a group and so on, that says this is not possible. Or maybe it is. And that's why so much information, and that's why you can see I'm harping on groups. Feedback is just something that will help no matter who it is.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks. Oh. Okay. Come on. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
That was awesome. That was great. Thanks. Yeah.